So welcome all to this Bhakti Shastra course, and we'll be continuing with Śrī Īśopaniṣad. We have 6 more mantras left, so we'll be planning. Okay, I'll just tell you before we start this mantra. Couple of announcements. One is that Īśopaniṣad exam will be there coming Sunday, that is 6th of February. Okay, and I will send you a list of essays. You don't have to write all the essays. You have to write one essay for Īśopaniṣad. So I'll send the list. We have these 5 topics. I'll give you these 5 topics, out of which you can choose one and write an essay on that. Maximum number of words should be 1500. And I think you would have already written for lecture of instruction. So it's the same format. It's the topic change. So these are the 2 things that we should take care of. And essays should be submitted by 10th of February. So which means next week, Thursday. So 6th will be your exam on Īśopaniṣad. Then on 7th, according to plan, Bhagavad-Gita chapter 9 will be started. And you will have 4 days of time to write the essay. Then best would be to submit it by 10th. Done with it. So yes, so mantra 13, just to give an introduction again, mantras 12, 13 and 14 follow the same pattern as mantra 9, 10 and 11. 9 and 10 and 11 speak about Vidya and Avidya based on the context how it should be understood differently in mantra 9, mantra 10 and mantra 11. Here we are speaking about Sambhuti and Asambhuti. So what is Sambhuti, what is Asambhuti? We discussed that in last session. And today we'll continue that discussion on Sambhuti, which is mentioned here as Sambhavat. We'll come to that. And then the next mantra will again speak about Sambhuti and Vinasha. Vinasha, you can say it's a synonym of Sambhuti or Asambhavat in this case. So how that which is permanent and that which is temporary, Sambhuti and Asambhuti, which is permanent, which is temporary. One who is the cause of all causes, and one who is supreme and one who is not supreme. One which is creation and other is destruction. So Asambhuti is destruction, it's Vinasha. It's not the supreme. It's not the cause of all causes. Whereas Sambhuti is the supreme. It is permanent. It's the cause of all causes and it is not subjected to destruction. So in these 3 mantras, 12, 13 and 14, these are the different understandings that we get for Sambhuti and Asambhuti. In mantra 12, Sambhuti is that which is permanent. Demigods are not permanent, that is Asambhuti, but the Supreme Lord is permanent. Or absolute truth is permanent, that is Sambhuti. And how a convoluted understanding of Asambhuti or definitely leads to darkness. A convoluted understanding of Sambhuti also leads to even further darkness. This is what we discussed in mantra 12. Here, Sambhavat and Asambhavat similar to Sambhuti and Asambhuti. So, Sambhuti here means the cause of all causes, that which is supreme. And Asambhuti is that which is not supreme, which is not the cause of all causes. Actually, it's an effect. Okay. So, if you worship the effect, then it takes to a different destination. If you worship the cause, it takes to a different destination. So because the effect is coming from the cause does not mean that even if you worship the effect, it will take you to the cause. So that understanding you will get from this mantra. And the next mantra would be Sambhuti and Vinasha. That which is creation and that which is destruction. So there, Srila Prabhupada will mention about the spiritual creation and the material creation. The material creation is bound to be destroyed, whereas spiritual creation is eternal. Spiritual creation is Sambhuti, whereas material creation, although it's created, still it is categorized as Vinasha only, because that's the reality of it. Material world in its essence, or material nature in its essence, is unmanifested, and only for a temporary period of time it's manifested so that living entities can enjoy their so-called pastimes of enjoying this material world, and then again it's destroyed. So it's not permanent, it's temporary. So this is the way of understanding Sambhuti and Asambhuti in and 14. So mantra 13 is one of the longest purports in Īśopaniṣad, and several of the topics which Srila Prabhupada mentions, we have already discussed this. Srila Prabhupada is obviously making new points. Okay, he's obviously making new points in this purport, but during the course of discussion of other mantras, we have covered some of those points. So again, we'll be reading most of it, not most of it, but some of it we'll be reading, and it will just be an instrument to enforce our understanding that we have already attained till this point, till mantra 12. So we'll enforce that understanding, and we will see how, although the purport is big, but each of the points that Srila Prabhupada makes is actually related to the text itself, to the mantra itself. Okay, first he will speak about dhirana, and if you remember, we discussed about dhiras or undisturbed authorities or undisturbed acharyas in mantra 9. Srila Prabhupada will again make that point that we should hear transcendental knowledge from dhiras. Then he will speak about anyad, how sambhuti will take to a different destination, asambhuti will take to a different destination. So then he will make this point in the purport, and after that then he will speak about what is asambhuti and what is sambhuti. Okay, so that's how the flow will go. First he will speak about dhira, then the different destinations and why there are different destinations. Why if we follow sambhuti, there is a different destination. Why we follow asambhuti, there is a different destination. And specifically it is with respect to the creation here, or the cause of all causes. Sorry, creation will come in the next mantra. Cause of all causes will be this mantra. Okay. Yeah. So anyad evahu sambhavat, anyad ahur asambhavat iti shushruma dhiranam yenastad vichachakshire. So translation is, it is said that one result is obtained by worshipping the supreme cause of all causes, and that another result is obtained by worshipping what is not supreme. All this is heard from the undisturbed authorities who clearly explained it. So anyad evahu sambhavat. Sambhavat is the word to word. By worshipping the Supreme Lord, the cause of all causes. Okay. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada will spend considerable amount of time to explain how Krishna is the cause of all causes. And he is what is referred to here as Sambhavat. And Asambhavat is by worshipping what is not the Supreme. So it includes everything else, or all the misconceptions that people have. Okay. Demigod worship could be pseudo-religions that we saw last time. And Vedavadaratas, Maya, Partagyanas, all those people will fall into this Asambhuti category. So both of them will lead to a different destination. So this has been heard in disciplic succession or by dhiras from undisturbed authorities. And we will see what that actually means. And it has been explained in a perfect manner, Vichachakshire. So this is the same as mantra 9, only 2 words have been changed. Mantra 9 is Anyadevahu Vidyaya, Anyadahur Avidyaya iti Shushruma Dhiranam Yenastad Vichachakshire. So there is Vidya and Avidya. Here it's Sambhavat and Asambhavat. The cause of all causes and that which is not supreme. That is only an effect, that is not the cause of all causes. So several themes are being discussed. So first is hearing from undisturbed authorities, that's Dhirana. Different result is achieved by different worship, that's your Anyad Evahu, Sambhavat and Asambhavat. Doing anything or worshipping anything is not authorized. Okay, we'll see that. Do what Krishna says. That's what Śrī Īśopaniṣad and all the other Vedas say. Worship Krishna because he is the Supreme Lord. Hearing from an Acharya with faith and love. And Krishna is the object of worship and not humanity. So this is where we'll discuss that Krishna is the cause of all causes and how one should worship the Lord. That will be the last section. It's like the conclusion. Okay, so several points have been discussed. So first is hearing from undisturbed authorities. Dhirana. The system of hearing from undisturbed authorities is approved in this mantra. Okay. And in mantra 9, this point, the discussion of Dhiranam happens at the end, almost at the end of the purport. But here Srila Prabhupada brings that into focus right at the start itself. Unless one hears from a bona fide Acharya who is never disturbed by the changes of the material world, one cannot have the real key to transcendental knowledge. So Dhirana means one who is sober or one who is not disturbed by changes. And we have discussed this material world is full of changes. There's only changes here. Nothing is permanent, everything is temporary. Temporary means there's always a flux, there's always a change. So those acharyas or pure devotees who are here within this material world, then they are dhiras because they understand the real nature of matter and spirit. So when matter is temporary, it is always undergoing a flux, there is no cause of getting disturbed. And in another sense, the dhiras are situated in minimum Shuddha Sattva, or perfection is Shuddha Sattva or Shuddha Sattva platform. So they are not unnecessarily agitated by passion and ignorance, by Rajoguna and Tamoguna. So therefore they are undisturbed. Those who are in Rajoguna, they hanker for something, and those who are in Tamoguna, they always lament. So there is no hankering, there is no lamentation. See, these 2 points are always discussed in Bhagavad-Gita also. So they are dhiras. They are not very happy, or rather they are not disturbed when there is happiness, and they are not disturbed when there is distress also. So one should hear from such a bona fide Acharya who is never disturbed. Otherwise, one cannot have the real key to transcendental knowledge. One who is in Shuddha Sattva can impart knowledge about Shuddha Sattva, or at least he should have an understanding of what Shuddha Sattva is. The bona fide spiritual master who has also heard the Shruti mantras or Vedic knowledge from his undisturbed Acharya never presents anything that is not mentioned in the Vedic literature. Right? Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, disciplic succession and the Vedic literature, we have been discussing this. So he never says that one can go to any destination, or rather one can go to the same destination by worshipping or by taking any path. In Bhagavad-Gita 9.25, it is clearly said that those who worship the Pitris or forefathers attain the planets of the forefathers, that the gross materialists who make plans to remain here stay in this world, and that the devotees of the Lord who worship none but Lord Krishna, the supreme cause of all causes, reach him in his spiritual sky. So this mantra is speaking about different destination of one who follows Sambhuta or Sambhavad and one who follows Asambhavad or one who worships Asambhavad. So this is already clarified in Bhagavad-Gita. Yanti devavrata devan, pitrini yanti pitrivrataha, bhutani yanti bhuteja, yanti madhyajinopima. So it's already there, and the same message is being spoken about in this mantra. Here also, in Śrī Īśopaniṣad, it is verified that one achieves different results by different modes of worship. Okay, so same thing has been confirmed. If you worship the Supreme Lord, we will certainly reach him in his eternal abode. If we worship demigods like the sun god or moon god, we can reach their respective planets without a doubt. And if we wish to remain on this wretched planet with our planning commissions and our stopgap political adjustments, we can certainly do that also. So it's our choice where we want to go. Worship the Supreme Lord, we go there. Worship the demigods, we go to their planets. If we want to remain here in this wretched planet with our planning commission, stopgap political adjustment, we can do so, but it may not be in the same body. It may not be in the human form of life. It may be in any form of life, animal form of life or insect form of life, like that. Nowhere in authentic scriptures is it said that one will ultimately reach the same goal by doing anything or worshipping anyone. Such foolish theories are offered by self-made spiritual masters who have no connection with the parampara, the bona fide system of disciplic succession. Right? We discussed this in last mantra also. The bona fide spiritual master cannot say that all paths lead to the same goal and that anyone can attain this goal by his own mode of worship of the demigods or of the supreme or whatever. Any common man can very easily understand that a person can reach his destination only when he has purchased a ticket for that destination. A person who has purchased a ticket for Calcutta can reach Calcutta, but not Bombay. But the so-called spiritual masters say that any and all paths will take one to the supreme goal. So what is Srila Prabhupada is speaking about here? Ramakrishna, yes. Yatomat tatopat. That's what he is speaking about. What say Yatamat? Whatever opinion you have, that is your path. And ultimately, it will lead you to the same destination. But it's not logical. It's bogus. And some people even use Bhagavad-Gita to justify that. They say, ye yatha mam prapadyante tam satyeva bhajamyaham mama vartmano vartante manushya patha sarvjaha. Everybody's path is my path only. They interpret like that. Okay. So, ye yatha mam prapadyante, as they surrender to me, ye yatha mam prapadyante tam satyeva bhajamyaham. As they surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path. So everyone follows my path means everybody is following his own path, but then it actually is Krishna's path only. So ultimately everybody will reach to the one goal. So whatever path he wants, he can take. So it's justified like this. But that is not the proper understanding. Okay. And we have already discussed this in Bhagavad-Gita, I think. This is from 4th chapter, 11th verse. So this is not the proper understanding. So just Srila Prabhupada gives this example. It's a very common example that Srila Prabhupada always used, that purchasing a ticket for that particular destination. Whichever train you sit in, you go to that destination. You cannot go to the other destination like this. Such mundane and compromising offers attract many foolish creatures who become puffed up with their manufactured methods of spiritual realization. See, this human form of life is meant for regulation. Regulating our sense gratificatory activities. We have discussed that in previous mantras also. That regulation is required, specifically when we were discussing mantra 11 about Vidya and Avidya, and Srila Prabhupada in the purport mentions about regulation of sense gratification. Okay. So regulation of sense gratification should ultimately lead one to, okay, this is not connected. So regulation of sense gratification should lead one to purification, and in that purificatory stage one is supposed to do what is right, or one is supposed to do that which is given in the Vedic literatures without having any personal motivation. Okay. So that is the purification that has to be attained. Fine. So when people manufacture different offers, or they manufacture different methods of spiritual realization, the point is that they have their own interest also in mind, and because they have their own interest in mind, then they do not want to follow that which is actually given in the Vedic literatures. So they manufacture something, that which will pacify, or that which satisfies them emotionally. And if you see many people, if you go and talk, especially when we are preaching or when we are doing book distribution or other things, people will say that I like to do this, therefore I am doing this. No, you don't come and try to change this or whatever. So I like to do this, therefore I am doing this, and this is what it is, and it gives me peace. Ultimately, religion is meant for what? It is supposed to give me peace, happiness, satisfaction, contentment, like this. And when I am following this particular path, I follow the Sai Baba or Ram Krishna, whatever, then I am getting that peace, I am getting that happiness, that content, that satisfaction. So why should I disturb that and then take up all these different or difficult, austere paths? I will not do so, like this. But this is just a sentiment, this is just our material attachment to our present situation, to our own mental concoctions. So this is compromising, this is mundane, this will not lead to the highest goal. One will not attain the spiritual world by thinking like this. The Vedic instructions, however, do not uphold them, they do not uphold such an understanding. Unless one has received knowledge from the bona fide spiritual master who is in the recognized line of disciplic succession, one cannot have the real thing as it is. So this is what it is. If we want spiritual knowledge, one must come in disciplic succession and gain knowledge from this bona fide spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada quotes this, Evam parampara praptam emma rajarshiyo vidhu sakalene hamata yogo nashtaf parantapa. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Why? Why is it appears to be lost? Why in course of time the succession is broken? Because people also want to induce or inject their own ambitions in the pure message of the disciplic succession. And when we try to inject our own abhilasha, our own ambitions in our spiritual life, then we get deviated. Okay, so this is one thing that we should learn. When we listen, when we hear from our spiritual master, when we hear or read from the books, okay, and try to imbibe that, we should always be very alert that our personal ambitions or our personal desires do not come in the way. The worldview or the understanding of this world, we try to accommodate that. Okay, we try to accommodate, saying that if I accommodate this, that and all, then I'll be able to spread Krishna consciousness more, I'll be able to reach a wider audience and do all kinds of things. So many justifications we might have for those activities which we are doing. But it's the spiritual path is said to be Kshurasya Dhara, it is like the edge of a blade. So any deviation or any diversion from this path will divert us completely, it will go in a tangent and will not be able to reach the supreme goal. Okay, so that's why for the message of disciplic succession, or the understanding of proper philosophy, understanding of Siddhanta and understanding of what we are supposed to do. The Abhideya, Sambandha and Abhideya must be perfect. Sambandha, the understanding of Sambandha should be perfect. Abhideya, our path or what we are doing as part of devotional service, that should also be approved by the authorities. And then we are sure that we will ultimately reach Prayojana. But if the Abhideya is a mixture of what the Acharya has told and our own concoction as well, based upon the subtle material desires that we may have, then we get diverted. It will not lead to the proper Prayojana. So therefore we should be very, very careful. And this is how this disciplic succession is broken. And it's imperative to say that in Kali Yuga, obviously there will be factions. Even disciplic succession also, there will be so many deviations, so many things would be there. Because people, when they come to Krishna consciousness, when they come to Vaishnava society, then they also come with a baggage of material desires. And till the whole complete process is followed and purification happens, and if purification happens, then there is a chance of mixing these two. And then thinking that whatever we are doing is right. And there are so many examples also which we already know of. I am not going to spend time discussing that because we have further more points to discuss. But I think you got the point that we have to be very, very clear on what the Abhideya is and what the Sambandha is. And then only our progress will be tangible. Otherwise, what happens? We hear of devotees, Guru Maharaj speaks about that devotees are chanting for 30 years, 40 years, but then no tangible benefit is being seen. So that means that there is something is hindering, some problem is there somewhere. So that much intelligence we should have to understand. So Srila Prabhupada continues. Who can understand the Bhagavad-Gita? When Lord Shri Krishna was present on this earth, the Bhakti Yoga principles defined in the Bhagavad-Gita had become distorted. Therefore, the Lord had to re-establish the disciplic system, beginning with Arjuna, who was the most confidential friend and devotee of the Lord. So, the starting of 4th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita itself is Imam Vyavaspite Yogam Proktavanam Vivasvanamaraveya Praha Manu Nishvaki Evam Parampara Praptam Imam Raja Shrimati Sakaline Mata Yoga Nashra Parantapa. Manu is the progenitor, he is the Prajapati, he is the one who is the father of all mankind. So this science of Bhagavad-Gita was imparted onto him through the disciplic succession starting from Krishna. And he obviously, this prayers of Īśopaniṣad itself is been spoken by Swayambhu Manu to Yagyamurti. If you remember our first sessions, Īśopaniṣad prayers, these prayers are manifested within the heart of Swayambhu Manu when he was praying to Yagyamurti, the incarnation of the Lord. Right? So the knowledge of Īśopaniṣad, which are elaborately described in Bhagavad-Gita, this transcendental knowledge was imparted by Manu to his descendants. But over a period of time, because of the corruption of this material nature itself, the nature of the material world itself is that everything destroys. So transcendental knowledge also, although cannot be destroyed, it can be corrupted by different ideas. And it happened through different Kshatriyas like this. So therefore it had become distorted. And the Lord had to re-establish the disciplic system, beginning with Arjuna. And because he was the confidential friend and a devotee. Sa evayam maya tedya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam etaduttamam. So sa evayam maya tedya. So this transcendental knowledge, certainly the transcendental knowledge. Sa evayam maya, me, te adya. Today I am going to give you that knowledge. Why? Because he is a confidential friend and devotee of the Lord.
So this is the qualification for one to gain transcendental knowledge. The Lord clearly told Arjuna that it was because Arjuna was his devotee and friend that he could understand the principles of Bhagavad-Gita, right? In other words, only the Lord's devotee and friend can understand the Gita. This also means that only one who follows the path of Arjuna can understand the Bhagavad-Gita, which is transcendental knowledge. Okay. So why is Srila Prabhupada making these points in the purport? Now with this, he is going to tell what exactly Gita speaks. If you see in the mantra, it's speaking about Sambhavat and Asambhavat, okay, as the cause of all causes, and that which is not the cause of all causes. How the Dhira is the one who can impart proper knowledge, but there are other fools also who are not Dhiras, but they proclaim themselves as spiritual master. It will come, then they will misguide, and we should not hear from them. They think that all the path will lead to the same goal, but here all the path will not lead to the same goal. Bhagavad-Gita explains this. And to understand Bhagavad-Gita properly, one should be a confidential devotee and friend of the Lord. And what does Bhagavad-Gita do? It establishes Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then Sambhavat. So different results is mentioned in Bhagavad-Gita. Okay, and Dhiras speak only about Bhagavad-Gita. And what does Bhagavad-Gita speak? It speaks about the cause of all causes. Krishna is the cause of all causes. So that's where it's leading to. But then he again gives a contract, Srila Prabhupada. He says that at the present moment there are many interpreters and translators of this sublime dialogue who care nothing for Lord Krishna or Arjuna. Such interpreters explain the verses of the Bhagavad-Gita in their own way and postulate all sorts of rubbish in the name of the Gita. And we saw one example, Yayathamam prapadyante, tam satyabhajan, mama vartamana vartante. It's an interpretation. Krishna is actually not speaking that. It's an interpretation, and they postulate all sorts of rubbish. And we have, over the course of our Īśopaniṣad discussions, we have seen quite few of them, of how impersonality is somehow taken, or impersonality or the impersonal feature of the Lord is considered as supreme, although they are studying Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Gita is being spoken of as a book of management. Oh, I have a list of some of the misconceptions, rubbish thoughts. So some people say, if you read Bhagavad-Gita, you don't have to do MBA. Have you heard this argument? I have heard this argument from several people. Bhagavad-Gita has all the management concepts. It has all the theories, all the management concepts are there. If you read Bhagavad-Gita, if you study Bhagavad-Gita, you don't have to do an MBA at all. You can be a business magnate like this. Okay. That's one thought. We have basically missed the whole point. Then, it's a life coach to attain success. Yes, in one way it is, okay, but we have to understand what success is and how it is a life coach. But when we just say it's life coach meant for attaining success in life, then people already have a conception of what is success in life and what coaching is to attain that success of life. And then we portray Bhagavad-Gita as that book which is life coach to attain success in life, it becomes completely mundane. Because their conception is completely mundane, the presentation is completely mundane. It is a book of coaching, it's a good life coach book for success in life, but the success in life is to attain transcendental loving devotion service to the Lord, to attain Krishna, to go back home, back to Godhead. And that way it's a life coach, yes, but not to attain mundane success in life. But how it's portrayed like this. So you should, as Guru Maharaj said, it should be very clearly defined what each of these terms is. When we are speaking of Bhagavad-Gita as a life coach book, then we should say what actually it means. What is success of life? Success of life can be just like Yatoma Tatopar, success of life can mean anything to anybody. For me, success of life can be something different, and for you it would be something else, and for the other person it would be something else. And all of this can be achieved by Bhagavad-Gita, people say. But no, the actual message of Bhagavad-Gita is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And ultimately what does Krishna want? Sarvarman paritejya mamekam sharanam vraja. This is what it's required. This is what is the actual coach. Or this is what is the actual direction that Krishna is giving. And the goal is this. But we concoct rubbish ideas. Another is that Krishna is the best of all and we can be like him. This is also said, different Shastras are being quoted that Krishna is the greatest human being, and you follow the principles of yoga which are explained in Bhagavad-Gita, you can also be like Krishna. If you know what Krishna is speaking, Krishna is speaking what he knows, and if you know what Krishna is speaking, then you also become like Krishna, right? You can also speak like him. So therefore you come on the same level as Krishna. So by following Bhagavad-Gita, then you become Krishna. And famous non-violence from Bhagavad-Gita. Srila Prabhupada spoke a lot about this. Somehow this grew out the meaning that from Bhagavad-Gita, if you read Bhagavad-Gita, you become non-violent. But throughout the Bhagavad-Gita, what is Krishna doing? He is inciting Arjuna to fight. But they say it's Bhagavad-Gita is a message. It's this thing of peace. It advocates only peace, non-violence. But again, it has to be understood in context. What is non-violence? What is peace? How is it explained in Bhagavad-Gita? Like this. And some people say this book will result in violence in the family. You should not keep Mahabharata at home. Bhagavad-Gita, no. People have told me this. If we go for book distribution and they say Bhagavad-Gita, no. Keep Bhagavad-Gita, then what is Krishna doing? He is asking him, Arjuna is a very good man, he does not want to fight, but Krishna is inciting him to fight. So if we keep it at home, then Krishna probably subtly will incite us also to fight amongst ourselves. Therefore, we will not have Bhagavad-Gita. Okay. Yeah, finally, do your work nicely. Read Bhagavad-Gita, attain peace, satisfaction, contentment, morality, equality, stress-free and a carefree life. Try to remain peaceful in this material world, and that's the message of Bhagavad-Gita like this. So these are some of the rubbish ideas. Okay, so let's continue. So such interpreters believe neither in Shri Krishna nor in his eternal abode. How then can they explain the Bhagavad-Gita? With these concocted ideas, some of which we discussed, how can they explain Bhagavad-Gita? The whole purpose of the book is lost. Krishna clearly says that only those who have lost their sense, worship the demigods for paltry rewards. This we have discussed. And we also saw last time that when the verses of Bhagavad-Gita mention about that Kamaste Tirtha Jnana Prapadanti Anya Devata, those who are foolish, those who are mudhas, they only worship the demigods. Like this. So they explain that translation very nicely. They say yes, no demigod worship, you go to a different, or those who are foolish, or those who are less intelligent, Krishna says that they worship the demigods like this. And when you come to that verse, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakta Madhyajivam Namaskuru, they say that you can worship anybody. When Krishna says Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakta, Mad Bhakta means my Bhakta, he says, but then that Mad Bhakta actually means he can worship anybody because Krishna is impersonal ultimately. And you can worship any of the demigods also. So it's not coherent, the message is not coherent. In one verse you are speaking correctly, in another verse you are making your own concoctions. So they are the people who have lost their sense, basically common sense also. They cannot even see the contradiction within their own understanding. Ultimately he advises that one give up all the other ways and modes of worship and fully surrender unto him alone. Saradharman Paritejya. Only those who are cleansed of all sinful reactions can have such unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord. Right, what is that verse? 7:28. How does it start? Tesham svantagatam papam jananam punyakaramnam te dvanda mohanirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrtaha yesham svantagatam papam. Okay. So those whose all sinful reactions have been cleansed. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta, they are free from this duality, and bhajante mam dridhavrtaha, they can have unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord. So this line is basically a short translation of that verse. Others will continue hovering on the material platform with their paltry ways of worship, and thus will be misled from the real path under the false impression that all paths lead to the same goal. So those who, they will continue hovering on the material platform because of their paltry ways of worship. In this mantra, okay, so with the proper understanding of how Bhagavad-Gita should be accepted, it should be accepted from dhiras. The transcendental knowledge should be accepted from dhiras, and those who are not dhiras, they will be misled. They will not have unflinching faith in Krishna. So therefore Bhagavad-Gita should be accepted from only dhiras. And what does Bhagavad-Gita speak? it speaks about Sambhavat, it speaks about the cause of all causes. So Krishna is the cause of all causes. So in this purport, Srila Prabhupada will start with Bhagavad-Gita, and apart from that, he will also quote from several other Upanishads to establish that Krishna is the cause of all causes. And therefore, because he is the cause of all causes, he is the one who should be worshipped. He is Sambhavat, and that will lead one to the perfect destination. If you worship anybody else, Asambhavat, it will lead to some other destination. In this mantra of Śrī Īśopaniṣad, the word Sambhavat, the worship of the Supreme Cause, is very significant. Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and everything that exists has emanated from him. In Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajanti ma buddha bhava samanvitaha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. You see, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavaha and Sambhavaha. So these two are similar. He is the one who is creating everything. Iti matva bhajante mam. And knowing this, one worships him. So to worship Krishna, the perfect understanding is that one should know that Krishna is the cause of all causes. With that understanding, when one worships, then he achieves perfection. And this is the reason why at several places Krishna speaks about him being the cause of all causes and him being the benefactory of all the sacrifices, of all activities. He is the one who is supposed to be known from all the Vedic literatures. He is the compiler of the Vedanta also for the benefit of everybody else. So he is keeping himself in the center. That is the perfect ego of Krishna. And one should follow that, and that way one becomes Buddha, or one becomes intelligent. So that leads one to the perfect destination. So after giving all these details from the various Upanishads, then Srila Prabhupada will write in this purport itself that Arjuna became Buddha by following what Krishna spoke to him in Bhagavad-Gita, indicating that we also are supposed to do that, to follow Arjuna. And that is the perfect understanding, because Arjuna did so since he was a confidential friend and devotee of the Lord. And this is his understanding. And therefore we are also supposed to do that in the same way, following the footsteps of Arjuna. Following a Dhira, basically. Arjuna became Dhira. He was an Adhira before, and then by listening to the message of Bhagavad-Gita, he became a Dhira. Here is the correct description of the Supreme Lord given by the Lord himself. The word Sarvasya Prabhavaha indicate that Krishna is the creator of everyone, including Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. And because these three principal deities of the material world are created by the Lord is the creator of all that exists in the material and spiritual worlds. So this is the proper understanding. In Hinduism, it's always considered, there are these three murtis are there. One is a creator, one is a maintainer, and another is a destroyer. And these three included, these three combined is the absolute truth. So they do have the understanding that demigods, other demigods also come from Lord Brahma like this. But this particular mantra or this particular verse from Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada specifically writes that these principal deities of the material world are created by the Lord, and in Srimad Bhagavatam they are mentioned as Gunavataras of the Lord. So therefore, because they are also created by the Lord is the creator of all that exists in the material and spiritual world. In the Atharva Veda, Gopala Tapani Upanishad, it is similarly said, he who existed before the creation of Brahma and who enlightened Brahma with Vedic knowledge is Lord Shri Krishna. This one reference. Similarly, the Narayana Upanishad states that the Supreme Person Narayana desired to create all living beings. That's from Narayana, Brahma was born. Narayana created all the Prajapatis. Narayana created Indra. Narayana created the 8 Vasus. Narayana created the 11 Rudras. Narayana created the 12 Adityas. Like this. So these verses are actually quoted in Srila Prabhupada's works. Since Narayana is a plenary manifestation of Lord Krishna, Narayana and Krishna are one and the same. The Narayana Upanishad also states, Devaki's son is the Supreme Lord. The identity of Narayana with the Supreme Cause has also been accepted and confirmed by Sripad Shankaracharya, even though Shankara does not belong to the Vaishnava or personalist cult. Right? And yes, so this Srila Prabhupada quoted several times, Narayana Paro Abhyaktat, like this. And one interesting this thing is that when in Sharirika Bhashya, Shankara's commentary to Vedanta Sutra, Shankaracharya, although he is propounding the philosophy of impersonalism or Advaitavad or specifically Mayavad philosophy, but there in his Sharirika Bhashya, at several places he speaks about Shaligram Shila worship. Okay. So what it basically means is that although speaking of philosophy, when Shankara is speaking about philosophy, for him he is supposed to propound complete absolute monism, which is only impersonalism like this. So there is no scope of any deity worship there, specifically when he is speaking about Vedanta Sutra. Although he spoke about Panchopasana, he wrote many stutis about different demigods also, all that is there, but that was meant to be a cultural factor, a guiding factor for those who cannot understand that they are one with the absolute truth. Okay, what we are speaking is not our philosophy. What we are speaking is Shankaracharya's philosophy. I am just giving an understanding, okay, trying to understand. Okay, so from his philosophical point of view, he actually should not be speaking, from his own standpoint, he should not be speaking about deity worship at all. Because deity means it's Maya for him, it's Mayavad, the Lord does not have a form. Not the Lord, Brahman doesn't have a form. But in Sharirika Bhashya, he does mention about Shaligram Shila worship. So which is also one of the indications that he was a covered personalist. Although he propagated the philosophy of Mayavad, but then internally he was a personalist only, which was confirmed by Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also. So this is also one of the factors or one of the understanding that we can get. In Bhagavad-Gita commentary, he says Narayana Param Avyakta. Beyond the Avyakta or the unmanifest or the unmanifested Brahman, there is Narayana. So I don't know how today's Mayavadis interpret this particular statement. And then they'll have some idea or they'll have some way of doing that also. They interpret, they squeeze out Maya from Bhagavatam, then what can we speak of these things? And yes, in Sharirika Bhashya also, he speaks about Shaligram Shila worship, although no other deities are mentioned. And he mentioned Shaligram Shila worship is the perfect worship of Brahman, like that. I don't exactly know, I just read it somewhere. So he's speaking about that also. So that means that he did give some injections here and there, but then otherwise his preaching was completely opposite. The Atharva Veda, Maha-Upanishad also states, only Narayana existed in the beginning, but neither Brahma nor Shiva, nor fire, nor water, nor stars, nor sun, nor moon existed. The Lord does not remain alone, but creates as he desires. So he does not remain alone, although he is complete in himself, but still he desires to create for expanding his enjoyment. Krishna himself states in the Moksha Dharma, I created the Prajapatis and the Rudras. They do not have complete knowledge of me because they are covered by my illusory energy. It is also stated in the Varaha Purana, Narayana is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and from him the four-headed Brahma was manifested, as well as Rudra, who later became omniscient by the blessings of Lord Narayana. And this is also mentioned in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Narad Muni goes and glorifies Lord Shiva, saying, you are very dear to the Lord, and that is why he has invested all his potencies onto you. You also can bestow liberation. You are also omniscient just like the Lord, and you are also as powerful as Lord Vishnu. And of course Lord Shiva says that it's just because of my false ego, to boost up my false ego, the Lord has done like that. So therefore it shows that I am not very favorable to him, and that the conversation continues like that. But it mentions, Sanatana Goswami mentions the reference that Lord Shiva is invested with the potency of Lord Vishnu, and that is how he can liberate living entities from this material world. Thus all Vedic literature confirms that Narayana or Krishna is the cause of all causes. In the Brahma Samhita also it is said that the Supreme Lord is Shri Krishna, Govinda, the delighter of every living being and the primeval cause of all causes. Ishvara Parama Krishna, of course. The really learned persons know this from the evidence given by the great sages and the Vedas, and thus they decide to worship Lord Krishna as all in all. Such persons are called Buddha or really learned because they worship only Krishna. Okay. So last mantra, in mantra 12, we discussed that how the great sages cannot know Krishna. The demigods and the great sages cannot know Krishna because Krishna is the source of the great sages. Aham madarihi devanam maharshinam cha sarvashaha. Right? But here he is saying that the learned persons, they know this evidence given by the great sages and the Vedas. So the great sages know about Krishna also like this. And this is also there in Bhagavad-Gita when Arjuna quotes about Krishna, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Pavam Bhavan, Purusham Shashadam Divyam, Adideva Ajavyam. And then he says about Asita, Devala, Vyasa, these are the great sages who know about you like this. So between the Vedic culture itself, we can understand there are sages who do not have the proper understanding and there are sages who have perfect understanding. And how is that possible? It is possible when one comes in proper disciplic succession. When one comes or learns from a proper authority. So then one becomes a Buddha. So when he speaks, so there is actually no contradiction. When he sees, when Krishna speaks about great sages there and Arjuna speaks about the sages who know about him, then we should understand that it's not a contradiction, but even the sages can get bewildered. Even the demigods can get bewildered. Okay, if they do not attain knowledge in disciplic succession. So not only in this Bhumandala, in this Bhuloka, in our planet, disciplic succession is prominent. Even to understand perfect knowledge about Krishna, one must follow the disciplic succession even in higher planets. Swargaloka, Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and even Lord Brahma has to hear from Krishna only to attain the transcendental knowledge. So it's not that when one attains a higher planetary system, that the knowledge is automatically revealed to him. No, one must surrender to a spiritual master. So these principles are common, or these principles are applicable to any part of this material universe, wherever we go. Surrender to the spiritual master is must, and hearing from proper authorities is a must, and that is the only way to come out of this material universe. There is no other way. Even Indra has to go to Brihaspati to gain that knowledge. Transcendental knowledge can also only be gained through disciplic succession. So no material qualification, we have been discussing this also in our mantras. No material qualification is enough to gain transcendental knowledge. So tad vijnanartham sagurum eva abhigachet. One must go to a spiritual master. Does not matter. You might be Lord Brahma, you might be Indra, Chandra, whatever it may be. And such persons are called Buddha, or really learned, because they worship only Krishna. Iti matva bhajantima Buddha bhava samanvitaha. One who knows Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he has created everything and he worships him, then he becomes Buddha. Not that one who knows only Krishna as the cause of all causes, but I will not worship him. He is not a Buddha, he is not intelligent. He does not become a learned person. Learned person means to know Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to know him as cause of all causes, and to worship him also. Just the understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but then I have so many other things to do and I will not be able to worship him. We will see that later. That is not a really intelligent person. He is not a learned person. So knowing Krishna as the Supreme Lord and worshipping him, both are required. Then one becomes a learned person. Then he makes progress. Just the understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and then getting entangled in materialistic activities will not work, will not lead one to, or it will not lead to a proper spiritual progress. Let's put it that way. The conviction that Krishna is all in all is established when one hears the transcendental message from the undisturbed Acharya with faith and love. Now it comes to full circle. He started from Dhira and he spoke about Anya Devahur Asambhavad, and then from Sambhavad is who? Krishna, the cause of all causes, and therefore this must be learned from an undisturbed Acharya with faith and love. So again, coming back to Dhira. One who has no faith in or love for Lord Krishna cannot be convinced of this simple truth. Those who are faithless are described in the Bhagavad-Gita as Mudha, fools or asses. It is said that the Mudhas derive the personality of Godhead because they do not have complete knowledge from the undisturbed Acharya. One who is disturbed, like Avajananti Bha Mudha, Manushim Tanumashitam, Param Bhavam Ajanantu, Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram. One who is disturbed by the whirlpool of mental energy is not qualified to become an Acharya. Simple. Okay. One cannot become an Acharya who is disturbed by this whirlpool. Whirlpool is, this in, you might have seen in a video, like lakes or in rivers, you will have this, because of some hole which has been created below the earth, the water starts in flowing into down, and anything that comes in that, or you would have seen, even when flood is there and the water is moving, the flood water is moving through different channels, then this whirlpool, okay, and one who gets entangled in that whirlpool is always pulled down. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada used this word whirlpool of material energy, means when one comes in contact with material energy, then there's no way that one can maintain himself. He cannot afloat, or he cannot maintain himself floating on that energy. He has to come down. Taking shelter of material energy means one has to come down, one has to go down. Material energy, you cannot float on material energy. Saying, I'll engage, okay, I'm doing Krishna Bhakti and 2 hours sense gratification is okay. No, we are taking shelter of material energy, pull us down, it will pull us down. Okay, so that kind of compromise will not work. Will not work basically means it will not see tangible progress. That's the point. We will not see tangible progress in our life. No, we will always be frustrated. This bhogatya or this sankalpa, vikalpa. Sankalpa is there, no, vikalpa again, no. So we don't have firm faith. We will not have firm faith in the process. Then, this is like a seesaw. It goes up, down, up, down, up, down, like a sine wave goes up and down like this. That will not work. Okay, that will not lead to the proper destination. That will keep us in this material world. All the opportunities will be provided to progress in spiritual life, but still it means an extended amount of lifetimes, or several lifetimes will be required to come to that stage of spiritual progress. So that's why it said, one who is disturbed by this whirlpool of material energy is not qualified to become an Acharya, because he himself is being pulled down, and then when he teaches to somebody else, he will also take him down with him. So an Acharya should be undisturbed, he should be dhira, he should be sober, he should be dvandva mohena bharata, he should be beyond the dualities. Before hearing the Bhagavad-Gita, Arjuna was disturbed by the material whirlpool, by his affection for his family, society and community. Thus Arjuna wanted to become a philanthropic, non-violent man of the world. And people, they encourage that Arjuna was good, Krishna was corrupted. But when he became Buddha, by hearing the Vedic knowledge of the Bhagavad-Gita from the Supreme Person, he changed his decision and became a worshipper of Lord Shri Krishna, who had himself arranged the battle of Kurukshetra. Arjuna worshipped the Lord by fighting with his so-called relatives, and in this way he became a pure devotee of the Lord. He became a pure devotee by fighting. So how can he become non-violent? Such accomplishments are possible only when one worships the real Krishna and not some fabricated Krishna invented by foolish men who are without knowledge of the intricacies of the science of Krishna described in the Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So those who are without knowledge of the intricacies of science of Krishna, they invent some fabricated Krishna, okay, or kalpanika Krishna. They say Krishna is the kalpana, and they give so many interpretations about the form of Krishna. So Krishna means black, black means unknown, therefore Krishna cannot be known. But then they are speaking about Bhagavad-Gita. Prabhupada spoke about this many times, and although they are giving commentary on Bhagavad-Gita, they speak like this. So if something is unknown and he has spoken something somehow, why are you commenting on it? If anyway it is going to be unknown. So this exposes their nonsensical attitude. And we will see, I have some references. So we will read from those references and see how Srila Prabhupada attacks these kind of misconceptions. According to the Vedanta Sutra, Sambhuta is the source of birth and sustenance, as well as the reservoir that remains after annihilation. So this is the proper understanding of Sambhuta. He is the source of birth, means the source of creation, and sustenance, means the source of maintenance, as well as the reservoir that remains after annihilation. So when annihilation happens, it does not mean the whole material energy itself is destroyed. The material energy of the Lord is eternal. We have been discussing this, the 3 Shaktis of Lord. The Lord's energies are unlimited, infinite, but can be categorized into these 3, spiritual, marginal and material. Bahiranga, Antaranga and Tatastha, like this. So Tatastha Shakti is the living entity, Antaranga Shakti is the spiritual energy. Bahiranga Shakti is the material energy. And all these three energies are eternal. Okay, so material energy is also eternal. The manifestation of the material energy is temporary. Okay, just like the example is given in the Upanishads of a mud and a mud pot. The creation of mud pot is temporary. The mud pot can be destroyed, but the mud cannot be destroyed. So similarly, the energy of the Lord is permanent. It's not temporary, it's eternal. But the creation is temporary. Okay, because it's created from the ingredients of the material energy. So the reservoir that remains after annihilation, that is also Sambhuta. So Sambhuta is the source of birth and sustenance, as well as is the reservoir that remains after annihilation. So everything is disposed of in the Supreme Lord after annihilation. And Janma Adyasya. Janma Adi means Janma Adi Asya. Janma Adyasya means Janma Adi. And that Adi covers everything else. Creation comes from the Lord, the maintenance and destruction also is happening from the Lord only. The Srimad Bhagavatam, the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the same author, maintains that the source of all emanations is not like a dead stone, but is avijñā or fully conscious. So the cause of all causes is not avijñā or not a dead matter. And this is attacking the point of this Big Bang theory that is being prevalent. What is the cause of creation? It's Big Bang. And one famous scientist or somebody told, you give us one miracle and we will explain everything in this cosmic phenomenon. And that one miracle is Big Bang theory. You see, we cannot understand how this Big Bang happened. So you religious people, you always speak about miracles and this, that and all. So many people have healed by this person, that person, so many miracles you speak about. So what I want is just one miracle you give to me and I'll explain the whole material cosmic manifestation. The one miracle is Big Bang. This is one thing which I cannot describe. But based on this Big Bang, I can explain all the phenomena within this material nature. That is arrogant. That's arrogance, because you cannot explain just by Big Bang all the cosmic manifestation. It's not possible. It's not possible. Why some people are born in some family. That concept itself cannot be explained by Big Bang theory. How will you explain order? How will you explain design? All these things cannot be explained. Right? By arrogance he is telling like this. So, but Big Bang theory, Big Bang is not the cause. Nothing order or life cannot be created from matter. Source of all emanations is not like a dead stone, but is avijñā or fully conscious. The primeval Lord, Shri Krishna, also says in Bhagavad-Gita that he is fully conscious of past, present and future, and that no one, including demigods such as Shiva and Brahma, know him fully. Right? Nobody knows this. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjana bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kaśchana. I know everything, past, present and future, but me, nobody knows. But then we are trying to know him, so that's the point. Half-educated spiritual leaders. Certainly, half-educated spiritual leaders who are disturbed by the tides of material existence cannot know him fully. They try to make some compromise by making the mass of humanity the object of worship. But they do not know that such worship is only a myth, because the masses are imperfect. So imperfect worship of imperfect deity will lead only to imperfection. The attempt by these so-called spiritual leaders is something like pouring water on the leaves of a tree instead of the root. We have discussed this before. The natural process is to pour water on the root, but such disturbed leaders are more attracted to the leaves than the root. Despite their perpetually watering the leaves, however, everything dries up for want of nourishment. The root is not visible, right? In the plant, the root is not visible. So Krishna is not visible, but the leaves are visible. And how do we determine the health of a plant? By seeing the leaves, by flowers, the fruits. So they think that is what is important. So therefore, flower the leaf or water the leaves. So people are suffering. I can see people suffering in front of me. Therefore, I should go and help them. That is proper. That is. We should have some morality. We should have some compassion. Showing of compassion is what? Going and helping people on the bodily platform. But is that the compassion? No, because after this is done, then again problem is going to come. Srila Prabhupada spoke about this. You feed some person today, he's going to get hungry again. Then tomorrow you again have to feed. So the problem continues. But if you give him that knowledge which takes him beyond this material world, where he does not have to take birth again, where he does not have to undergo this repeated birth and death. He goes beyond this material world. That is proper compassion. That is perfect compassion. And because people do not see this repeated process of birth and death, they think that is not important. But the immediate problem, that is important. The leaves are important. The root is not important. The natural process is to pour water on the root. But yeah, so we discussed. Śrī Īśopaniṣad advises us to pour water on the root, the source of all germination. Worship of the mass of humanity by rendering bodily service, which can never be perfect, is less important than service to the soul. Right? The soul is the root that generates different types of bodies according to the law of karma. So the soul is the one who is transmigrating from one body to another body. Okay, and because the soul is covered by the subtle body, based on the subtle body, then the gross body is manifested. And all happens according to the law of karma. Karmana daiva netrena jantur deho papattaye. They attain their body based upon their karma under the jurisdiction of the devatas. To serve human beings by medical aid, social help and education facilities, while at the same time cutting the throats of poor animals in slaughterhouses, is no service at all to the soul, the living being. No, there are three things which Srila Prabhupada is speaking about here. One is the proper service, which is to the soul, and the mundane understanding that by serving humanity is the proper service. But even that is not perfect. Even though they want to serve the material body of other living entities, they want to serve the bodies, but still they see distinction between the bodies. They see humanity is the one whom I should save, and animals should be killed for my taste. So even there they are making, or their conception is not perfect. So the perfect conception is seeing everybody as a living entity, as part and parcel of Krishna, as soul. The living being is perpetually suffering different types of bodies from the material miseries of birth, old age, disease and death. The human form of life offers one a chance to get out of this entanglement simply by re-establishing the lost relationship between the living entity and the Supreme Lord. Right? The Lord comes personally to teach this philosophy of surrender onto the Supreme, the Sambhuta. Real service to humanity is rendered when one teaches surrender to and worship of the Supreme Lord with full love and energy. That is the instruction of Śrī Īśopaniṣad in this mantra. So one should worship Sambhuta, one should worship Sambhavad, not Asambhavad. The simple way to worship the Supreme Lord in this age of disturbance is to hear and chant about His great activities. The mental speculators, however, think that the activities of the Lord are imaginary. Therefore, they refrain from hearing of them and invent some word jugglery without any substance to divert the attention of the innocent masses. Yes, so again, the Lord's activity, Lord is imaginary, fabricated Krishna, and His activities are also imaginary. Therefore, they refrain from hearing of them and invent some word jugglery without any substance to divert the attention of the innocent masses. There are so many bows who do this. Instead of hearing the activities of Lord Krishna, such pseudo-spiritual masters advertise themselves by inducing their followers to sing about them. This is happening. Shvaidvarahoštrais, Kharais, Samsuda Purusha Pashu. So those who are like hogs, dogs, camels and asses, they praise those or worship those who are like hogs, dogs, camels and asses. This is what is going on now. Yes. In modern times, the number of such pretenders has increased considerably, and it has become a problem for the pure devotees of the Lord to save the masses of people from the unholy propaganda of these pretenders and pseudo incarnations. So this is our main preaching. We don't speak much about Krishna's Leela, Krishna's pastimes and all, but most of our effort goes in destroying these pretenders because they lead innocent people into doom, into destruction. The Upanishads indirectly draw our attention, and actually for this Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he used to say that there are two ways of preaching. There is this positive way of preaching and then there is a negative way of preaching. Positive way of preaching is when we speak about the glories of Krishna, about the pastimes of Krishna, about how Krishna is so great and things like that. And negative way of preaching is when we destroy all the unholy propaganda or all the bogus things and then establish Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Siddhanta Saraswati specifically mentioned in this age, This negative preaching is what will work. Positive preaching will lead only to more misconceptions. Unless one has the proper understanding by negating all this unholy propaganda, till that point one cannot have the perfect understanding of who Krishna is. So therefore, we see, Srila Prabhupada is speaking about his religious pretenders, about pseudo-religionists, about this impersonalists, so much in Īśopaniṣad, and not really speaking about Krishna's great qualities, his pastimes, this thing, that thing and all. And the reason for that is this, because this is what will work. This is what will establish one in proper Siddhanta, in proper understanding of Krishna. With this as an understanding, one will not be cheated, one will not be misguided, and one will be able to see how his spiritual life is progressing. So this is the proper way of preaching. So we cannot be, when we are talking to people, when they are preaching, it's a must to show the reality as it is, how people are cheating, the reality of this material world. You cannot just say talk about Krishna's pastimes. That's good, but then the age of Kali is such that it's not that. We find it negative preaching to be more effective than this. The Siddhanta Saraswati explained that. The Upanishads indirectly draw our attention to the primeval Lord, Shri Krishna, but the Bhagavad-Gita, which is a summary of all the Upanishads, directly points to Shri Krishna. You see, in Īśopaniṣad, it never speaks about Bhagavan. Srila Prabhupada speaks definitely, but not in the mantras. And there is no mention about the word Krishna or Vishnu or Vasudeva or Narayana. No. Not even one single time it has been used. But in Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna speaks about himself. Mam, Aham. We will see some references also. Actually, this word Mam and Aham is used so many times in Bhagavad-Gita that it's amazing that Krishna is putting himself in the center. You will see some references. It's amazing. Therefore, one should hear about Krishna as he is by hearing from the Bhagavad-Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this way, one's mind will gradually be cleansed of all contaminated things. And this is also one of the reasons why we should read Prabhupada's purport. Not only the translation, but Prabhupada's purport also, the way we are doing now. Because that cleanses all the contamination. We get perfect understanding of who Krishna is. So that's why his books are so effective. Srimad Bhagavatam says, by hearing of the activities of the Lord, the devotee draws the attention of the Lord. Thus the Lord being situated in the heart of every living being helps the devotee by giving him proper directions. This is Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Pravajitra, I think. No, Shrinutam Svakta Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridayantasto Hebadrani Vidnoti Suhrit Satam. And Bhagavad Gita also confirms the same thing. Tatami Bhakti Yogam Tam Yena Mam Upyanti Te. The Lord's inner direction cleanses the devotee's heart of all contamination produced by the material modes of passion and ignorance. Tada rajas tamo bhava. That's it was. Kamalobhasayaschaye cheta vidhir anavidyam sitvam sattve prasidati. Right? This is the verse. Okay. So, tada rajas tamo bhava. One, this is Prabhupada is explaining that verse here. Non-devotees are under the sway of passion and ignorance. One who is in passion cannot become detached from material hankering, and one who is in ignorance cannot know what he is or what the Lord is. Thus, when one is in passion or ignorance, there is no chance for self-realization. However much one may play the part of a religionist. For a devotee, the modes of passion and ignorance are removed by the grace of the Lord. So when we are speaking about material pool, the whirlpool of material energy, this is Rajoguna and Tamoguna. It always pulls down. In this way, the devotee becomes situated in the quality of goodness, the sign of a perfect Brahmana. Anyone can qualify as a Brahmana if he follows the path of devotional service under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. And this is also mentioned, this how passion leads to ignorance in Bhagavad Gita 2nd chapter, I think text 62 onwards. It says, then Kama leads to Krodha, Krodha leads to Sammoha, Sammoha Smriti Vibhrama, Smriti Vamtat Buddhinasha, Buddhinashat Pranashyati. So lust is in mode of passion. And then that lust leads to then Krodha, which is a mixture of passion and ignorance. And Krodha and Sammoha, illusion, then ignorance starts. So passion, although we might say, Krishna also says, Rajoguna, one remains. Urdham Gachanti Sattva, Madhya Tishtanti Rajasa. Rajasa will sustain one in this material world like this. But then it will actually lead one to the lower guna, the Tamoguna. Because the manifestation of Rajoguna is lust. And then it leads one down. So one cannot keep himself just by entangling him, or just by doing these Rajoguna activities, one cannot sustain himself. He has to go down. So that's why it said passion and ignorance, the manifestation of material energy, it will lead one, it will take one down. It cannot go, one cannot go up. If even one has to sustain. With Rajoguna, there should be a mixture of Sattva-guna also. For a devotee, yeah, this will be right. Anyone can qualify as a Brahmana if he follows the path of devotional service under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Yeah, one should elevate himself to the quality of Sattva-guna. Srimad Bhagavatam says, Kirat Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhiya Sumbha Yavana Kasadaya Yene cha Papa Yat Apashraya Shrayaha Shuddhyanti Tasmai Prabhu Vishnave Namaha. Any low-born person can be purified by the guidance of pure devotee of the Lord, for the Lord is extraordinarily powerful. So, conclusion, what is perfection of Sambhava? We have been discussing at Sambhavat. When one attains Brahminical qualifications, he becomes happy and enthusiastic to render devotional service to the Lord. Automatically, the science of God is unveiled before him. By knowing the science of God, one gradually becomes freed from material attachments, and one's doubtful mind becomes crystal clear by the grace of the Lord. One who attains this state is a liberated soul and can see the Lord in every step of life. This is the perfection of Sambhava, as described in this mantra of Śrī Īśopaniṣad. Okay, so I think this is actually Srimad Bhagavatam verse, but I am not able to recollect which one is this. So Srila Prabhupada is actually writing the explanation of one of the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, but I am not able to recollect which one is that. Okay, so I think this is the end of the purport, and it's a bit complicated purport. Several points Srila Prabhupada discusses, so we will see this. So foolish self-made spiritual masters and spiritual leaders, what do? They fabricate Krishna, they worship fabricated Krishna. They care nothing of the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. They think that they can reach the same goal by worshipping anyone, yatomat tatopat. They explain Bhagavad-Gita in their own way, and they attract foolish creatures who become puffed up. So these self-made spiritual masters, they attract foolish creatures. They cannot know Krishna, and they compromise humanity as the object of worship, whereas because they don't know Krishna, they pour water on the leaves and they think bodily service is more important than soul service. They do medical aids, social help and education for humanity, but at the same time they kill animals in slaughterhouses. They speculate and think the Lord's activities are imaginary, and therefore they refrain from hearing of them. They invent word jugglery and they divert attention of the innocent masses by doing so. The number of such pretenders have increased considerably, and therefore it has become a problem for pure devotees to save the masses from them. And these people advertise themselves as the objects of glorification. Right? We discussed all these points. And the pure devotees have to save the masses from the unholy propaganda of these pretenders and pseudo incarnations, who are those foolish self-made spiritual masters and leaders. Okay. Then this mantra speaks about, this purport speaks about Krishna as the cause of all causes. So he is Sambhuta, he is the cause of all causes. Upanishads indirectly draw the attention to Krishna, whereas Bhagavad-Gita directly points to Krishna. See, if this chart or the summary that we are discussing, it's a concise summary. We are not going in the order of the purport. Okay, so all the points specific to one particular topic have been assimilated like this. So this in Upanishad direct drawing attention to comes at the end of the purport, but the Krishna as the cause of all causes comes in the middle. So he is the source of birth, sustenance and reservoir after annihilation, and he is Abhijna, he is fully conscious. Then Narayana Upanishad says that he desired to create, and thus he created Brahma, Prajapati, Indra, 8 Vasus, Rudras, like this. Narayana Upanishad, Mantra 4, this is Mantra 1, it's not mentioned here. Mantra 1 spoke this, Mantra 4 spoke about this, Devaki's son is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Shankaracharya also confirmed this. Everything that exists emanates from him. He is the creator of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. Maha Upanishad says that only Narayana existed in the beginning and he created as he desired. Gopal Tapani Upanishad says that he existed before Lord Brahma and he enlightened Lord Brahma. Moksha Dharma from Mahabharata says that Krishna created the Prajapatis and Rudra. Varaha Purana mentions that Narayana is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Brahma Samhita says Krishna is the primal cause of all causes, and one knows this, that Krishna is the supreme cause of all causes through the great sages who follow the Vedic literatures. And therefore, iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. So they worship only Krishna. And Krishna, he purifies devotees from within their hearts and removes passion and ignorance. And non-devotees in passion and ignorance cannot know him, and there is no chance of self-realization there. And the Lord who removes passion and ignorance, then one becomes qualified as a Brahmana. Right? Okay, is there anything else? No. So, this is one. And then worshipping. So, if we want to remain in the wretched planet, then we basically become devotees of our planning commission and political adjustments. If you go to the planets of demigods, worship demigods, which we discussed in last mantra. And the path of devotional service leads to Krishna, who lives in his eternal abode. Arjuna became Buddha by hearing from real Krishna. So this is the real Krishna. And Krishna, by worshipping Krishna, one becomes qualified as a Brahmana. So this is from the previous summary. One becomes happy and enthusiastic to render service to Krishna. Science of God is unveiled to him. His doubtful mind becomes crystal clear. And in that liberative stage, he can see the Lord in every step of life. Therefore, that is the perfection of Sambhava. Okay. And worship the Supreme Lord with full energy, one can do so by hearing and chanting about his great activities. And this is the real service or philosophy of surrender, which is the worship, the path of pure devotional service to Krishna. Right? Makes sense? Okay. Finally, so we have this. We should have faith and love in the Acharya, in the undisturbed authorities, in the Dhiras. If we have that faith and love, then the conviction is established that Krishna is all in all by hearing from that undisturbed authority. The Acharya or the Dhira, he receives knowledge from disciplic succession and through the Vedic instructions. Our Vedic instructions are received through disciplic succession. And Vedic instructions must be heard, or it should be understood. It can be understood only by a devotee and a friend of the Lord, and due to this unflinching faith, one will be cleansed of all sinful reactions. So this Acharya is undisturbed by changes in the material world, is Dhira. Hearing from an Acharya is the real key to understand transcendental knowledge, and this Acharya or Dhira never presents anything not there in the Vedic literature. Those who do not have faith in the Acharya or the Dhira, they are the Mudhas, fools or asses. They deride the personality of Godhead and they are disturbed by the whirlpool of material energy. Okay, so this is in summary, this purport. Now we have 5 minutes. We might have to extend this session by around 5 minutes because it's a long purport and we have to discuss that. So maybe by 9:05 we'll be able to complete. So there are some of the references. I have lots of references. We'll try to see as much as we can. So Srila Prabhupada speaking about Yatomat Tatopat, issue from Srimad Bhagavatam. So he says that atheistic men generally say Yatomat Tatopat. So they are not theists also, those who speak like this. They are atheistic people. According to this view, there are hundreds and thousands of different opinions in human society, and each opinion is a valid religious principle. Okay, it does not make any sense, but that's how people think. This philosophy of rascals has killed the religious principles mentioned in the Vedas, and such philosophies will become increasingly influential as Kali Yuga progresses. In the last stage of Kali Yuga, Kalkidev, the fierce incarnation of Keshava, will descend to kill all the atheists and will save only the devotees of the Lord. So, again, this is one lecture. But these Mayavadi rascals will say that the demigods are also Maya, Krishna is also Maya, everything is Maya. Therefore, we call them Mayavadi. Everything Maya, Krishna Bhakti is Maya. They say it is good for raising oneself to the platform of impersonalism. Their process is that you, if you want to go to a higher platform, you take one staircase and get on it and then throw it away because you don't require to come down again. That is their philosophy. So you take any means. The Ramakrishna Mishra also says that Yatomat Tatopat. You can worship Brahma Varchasa, you can worship Devi Maya, you can worship Basu, you can worship Rudra, you can worship anyone. Ultimately, you become one with the Supreme. Most misguiding. from teachings of Queen Kunti. Religion consists of the laws of God. People who do not know this think that religion means faith. Right? This is very important. Nowadays, religion is just said faith. Christianity based on faith. And actually they will, if we go or if we hear from the scientists, in different videos and debates and other things, they will not even say religion. They will say, what is your faith? I am Christian. What is your faith? I am from Islam. So one who has faith, he is a mudha. That's the label that is being given. So even during Prabhupada's time also, when when the interviewers used to speak to Prabhupada, so they say, what is the problem with different faiths? They will not say religion. What is the problem with different faith? What is the problem with Christianity? Why are you propagating Krishna consciousness? What is the problem with Christianity? What is the problem with Islam? Or what is the problem with other faith, they say. Right? So religion has been explained as faith, something which is not scientifically verifiable. But Srila Prabhupada's revolution stays here, is that he presented religion as a scientific process, that which is tangibly verifiable, that which can be experienced, for which there is a specific process and which has been scientifically explained. The knowledge has been scientifically explained in the Vedic literatures. So therefore the process is there, and this thing, endeavor is to be made, and then it can be directly experienced. Pratyakshavagaram dharmyam. So we discussed that during our epistemology session also, that direct daivya, Vaidusha Pratyaksha is there. One who can directly see the Lord, for him there is no doubt. So it's not just a matter of faith that Krishna is all cause of all causes. It's not a matter of faith that I have to do devotional service to him like this. For those Acharyas, those undisturbed authority, Krishna is a tangible fact because they have seen him. Vaidusha Pratyaksha, they have seen him. So religion is not a faith. Religion is the process to see God. How many times we have heard this from Prabhupada, right? Religion is the process. Our whole spiritual life, Krishna consciousness is the process to meet God, to see Krishna, to know him, to interact with him, to have a relationship with him, to love him. So religion does not mean only faith. Of course, faith is required when we do not have Vaidusha Pratyaksha, obviously, when we are not fully realized, that is there. But that faith is also reasonable. That faith is based on the Shruti Shastra. We discussed this during our epistemology session, so I am not going to spend much time on this. But religion means faith, is what people think. But although you may have faith in something and I may have faith in something, and although I may believe you and you may or may not believe me, that is not religion. There is even a supposedly religion mission that says you can manufacture your own way. Yatomat tatopad. Whatever you think is right, that is right. This is their philosophy. But that is not science. Suppose I am a madman. Is whatever I think all right? How could this be? 2 plus 2 equals 4 is science. If I believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5 or 3, does it become true? No. So there are laws of God. And when there is dharmasya glanihi, deviation from these laws, we suffer. Just as we might suffer by violating the laws of the state, as soon as we violate the laws of God, we are subjected to so many tribulations. You cannot say that everything is medicine. Whichever bottle I take, that's all right. No, that's not. That is going on. Yatamat tatapat. Foolish men or men with poor fund of knowledge, they interpret Krishna according to their respective whims. The fact is, however, that one cannot understand the science of personality of God unless one is freed from the contamination of the material modes. So this was also mentioned in today's purport. Passion and ignorance. Passion means, sense gratification means passion. Okay, so passion and ignorance with sense gratification cannot understand Krishna as he is. Even up to the stage of a Brahmana. When a qualified Brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know Krishna, what is actually the personality of Godhead. Otherwise, not possible. The real purpose of such foolish people is to impose the impersonalist conclusion on all Vedic literature. The Mayavadi atheists also interpret the Bhagavad-Gita. In every verse of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, it is clearly stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In every verse, Vyasadeva says, Shri Bhagavan Vacha. It is clearly stated the Blessed Lord is the Supreme Person. But Mayavadi atheists still try to prove that absolute truth is impersonal. In order to present their false imaginary meanings, they must adopt so much word jugglery and grammatical interpretation that they finally become ludicrous. Right? It becomes a joke. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remarked that no one should hear the Mayavadi commentaries or purports to any Vedic literature. What did he say? Mayavadi Bhashya suniye, hoye sarvanash. You hear Mayavadi commentary, you are doomed. So done, everything is lost. Okay, so another reference. God sometimes displays himself as God, sometimes as a human being. But the rascal impersonalist dismisses his pastimes as legend or mythology. Either they do not believe in the Shastra or they interpret them in their own way, using Ardha Kukuti Nyaya, the logic of half a hen. Right? We know this. So the impersonalists accept the Shastra in this way. They think, oh, this is not good, it is inconvenient, we shall cut this portion out. When Krishna says, one should see me everywhere, the rascal Mayavadis think it is very palatable. Everywhere, no? We should see everywhere. Krishna is everywhere, we should see everywhere, therefore impersonal. But when he says, give up everything and surrender to me, they disagree. They accept what is convenient and reject what is not. But the Acharyas do not distort the Shastras in this way. When Krishna spoke the Bhagavad-Gita, Arjuna said, I accept whatever you have said. Sarvameta Dhritamman, everything I accept. Not that something I accept and something I reject. There is a type of spiritual master and disciple much advertised in this age of Kali. It is said that the master injects spiritual force into the disciple by an electric current generated by the master, and the disciple begins to feel the shock. He becomes unconscious and the master weeps for his exhausting his store of so-called spiritual assets. Such bogus advertisements is going on in this age, and the poor common man is becoming a victim of such advertisement. Yeah. So-called Hinduism is propagating this in the garb of Ramakrishna mission. Okay, so in Bhagavad-Gita it is said that those who are too attached to seeking material possession and material enjoyment cannot reach yoga samadhi, absorption and Krishna consciousness. Absorption will not happen, like flickering, that's all. You might think that flickering itself is good, but absorption is required. Propaganda that one can enjoy this life materially and at the same time spiritual advance is simply bogus. These four regulative principles are called tapasya. To absorb the mind of the Supreme in the Krishna consciousness is the process of spiritual realization. You have to absorb the mind, not in sense gratification, not in materialistic activities, but in the Supreme. We do not know how people can be captivated by the bogus yoga system, in which it is stated that simply by meditating 15 minutes daily, one can attain the perfection of becoming one with God. Well, this was there in Prabhupada's time, and it's there now also. This age is the age of bluffing and quarrel. Bluffing is word jugglery, just shooting out random words. Actually, there is no possibility of attaining yoga perfection by such paltry proposals. The Vedic literature for emphasis clearly states 3 times that in the age of Kali, Kalo Nasteva, 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 there is no other alternative, no other alternative, no other alternative than Harer Nama, chanting the holy name of the Lord. Okay, so this is a very good explanation of how Krishna is the cause of all causes. This from life comes from life is one of the morning walks. Inferior energy has no power unless superior energy is involved. The sea, indicating the Pacific Ocean, is calm and quiet. But when the superior force air pushes it, it manifests high waves. The ocean has no power to move without the superior force of the air. Similarly, there is another force superior to the air and another and another. Ultimately, we arrive at Krishna. This is real research. Krishna controls nature just as an engineer controls a train. The engineer controls a locomotive which pulls one car, and that car in turn pulls another, which pulls another, and so the whole train is moving. Similarly, with creation, Krishna gives the first push, and then by means of successive pushes, the entire cosmic manifestation comes into being and is maintained. So this is explained in Bhagavad-Gita. Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. This is this 14th chapter. Sarvayonisha Kaunte Murte Sabhavanti hai Tasham Brahmavat Yohir Aham Bija Pradapita. Right? Aham, he says. If we sow a banyan seed, a huge tree eventually comes up, and along with millions of new seeds. Each of these seeds can in turn produce another tree with millions of new seeds, and so on. This is how Krishna, the original seed-giving father, is the primary cause of everything we see. Right? The scientist cannot produce a thing like this. If an effect has to be there, then the cause should have a gross manifestation of that effect already. Okay, we will not have time to explain this, but it's just like this, no? If the machine is supposed to produce something, okay, then the ingredient is to be there within that machine itself. Correct? Then only it can produce something. It's just like printer, we say, just like printer. A printer can print from paper. on paper. So what do you have to give to the printer? You have to give to the printer this ink cartridge. Ink has to be supplied and paper has to be supplied, and the proper machinery should be there, and then it can transform that energy and bring out something to us, correct, in the form of printout. So there is a gross cartridge, ink cartridge that is required, and there is paper also which is gross, which is also required, and then it can combine together by art of some machinery, by some work, and then give us this paper. So the effect is the printout, and we can say the cause is that machine which is giving us that printout. But the effect of that paper or what that printout, it's already there in a gross manifestation within the machine itself in the form of ink and paper, right? But if you see, the seed, there is no gross manifestation of any of the fruits, the seed, the leaves, the branches, the wood, nothing is there. Just the seed is there. But that seed is capable of producing millions of other seeds also, although the effect is not grossly visible in that. So the modern scientists, they can work with gross materials, but they cannot do something subtle like this. So this proves, or this is a very substantial point to prove that the Supreme Lord, there is a designer behind this creation, there is a Supreme Lord behind the creation, because no scientist can create a seed like this. No scientist can create something like this. Unfortunately, the scientists observe only the immediate cause. They cannot perceive the remote cause. Then Srila Prabhupada explains the remote cause. So, and finally says this is their disease. Although the scientists are searching after the original cause, when the Vedas, perfect knowledge, declare the original cause to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the scientists won't accept it. They keep it to their partial imperfect knowledge. This is their disease. And it speaks about Panchapasana, which we discussed last time. And Prabhupada writes, so sadhakanam hitarthaya brahmano rupa kalpanaha. Now this is for kalpana, where one imagines the form of the Lord. So he says, because you cannot worship, this is what they say, sorry. Ultimately the absolute truth is Nirakar, there is no form, but because you cannot worship or meditate upon the Nirakar, so just imagine some form, either of Vishnu or Lord Shiva or Surya or Devi, Panchapasana, it is called Panchapasana. Sadhakanam hitarthaya, to benefit the sadhaka, hita arthaya, brahmano rupa kalpanaha, you can imagine a rupa, a form of the Brahman. This is kalpana, he imagines. Ultimately the Brahman has no form. But because you are accustomed to meditate on the forms, it is very difficult for you to meditate upon the formless, so you imagine some form. This is imagine, not fact. Okay, so this we discussed, right? When this Panchapasana, when we were discussing mantra 12, I think. So when they imagine the form of Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, Surya, Durga and Ganesha, that form of Lord Vishnu is not actually the deity form of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada specifically writes in the purport that it's the form of idol worship. Remember? Okay. He wrote about idol worship there. So that is imaginary form of the Lord. That form of Vishnu is not to be accepted as the deity form of the Lord, because the consciousness of the worshipper is that this form of the Lord is actually Maya. So it's an offense. That deity worship, so-called deity worship, is an offense. Okay. Yeah, so one should receive the message through oral reception. This does not mean, however, that the spiritual master gives a particular type of mantra to the ears in exchange for some dollars, and if the man meditates on that, he achieves perfection and becomes God within 6 months. Such reception to the ears is bogus. Proper reception should be there. Okay, so yeah, I think Prabhupada is speaking about impersonalists more. Yeah, about real welfare work, which we've already discussed before. And material enjoyment as encouraged by bogus yogis has nothing to do with the transcendental realization of spiritual happiness. Real devotees of Bhakti Yoga accept only the material necessities of life absolutely needed to maintain the body and soul together. They refrain completely from all exaggerated material sense gratification. They are prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulation, provided they can make progress in the realization of the personality of Godhead. So now we discussed so much about the impersonalists, how they construe different meanings from Bhagavad-Gita, but these are some of the verses where Krishna speaks about himself. He addresses himself as Mama. Okay, actually I wanted to go through all of them and give the context. It's very amazing. He says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante, surrender unto me. The one who surrenders to me, mam prapadyante. Devi hesha gunamai, mama maya turatya. He says, Maya is mine. Tesham jnani nityayukta ekta bhaktir vishishyate priyo hi jnanino aham sacha mama priyaha. He is dear to me. So it is me to whom he is dear. And who is that? That Jnani. So Jnani is dear to me, not to some impersonal something. Avyaktam vyaktimapannam mannante mama buddhayaha param bhavam jananto mamavyayam anuttamam. Mama avyayam anuttamam. Speaking about himself, his form, which is uttamam, anuttamam. Avyaktokshara ityuttaks tamahu paramam gatim yam prapira nivartante tadhama paramam mama. That abode, which is avyakta, avyaktokshara ityuktas. It's called avyakta, it's called akshara. No, impersonal, no? It's not avyakta, it's akshara, means impersonal. Tamahu paramam gatim, that is the supreme destination. So Mayavadis will be very happy about these first two lines. Yam prapira nivartante, okay, one who goes there does not come back. And then he says that dhama, he says that's a spiritual abode of mine. Okay. So this dhama destroys the dreams of the Mayavadis, which they had in the first three lines. And he says that dhama, paramam. And whose dhama is that? It's mine, mama dhama. Very amazing verse. Nachamasthani bhutani pashyama yoga maishwaram bhuta pranisha bhutasto mamatma bhuta bhavana. So my personal form. Again, mama bhuta maheshwaram. Etam vibhuti yogam cha mamayo veti tatpataha. One who knows me completely. So abhikalpena yogena yujyate natra samshayaha. So he becomes situated in yoga by knowing me. Nantostimam divyana. People do not know that my form is divya. My vibhutis are also divya. Sudurdarsham idam rupam drishtvan asiyan mama deva apyasya rupasya nityam darshana kankshina. So my rupa, even the demigods want to, they have the desire to see my rupa. Idam jnanam upashritya mama sadharmyam agataha sarge pinopajayante pralayecha pralayena yathanticha. So one who has taken shelter, idam jnanam upashritya mama sadharmyam agataha, one who is in perfect knowledge. Jnanam in this context refers perfect knowledge. We will be discussing this. Then mama sadharmyam agataha, he attains my own nature, he says. Krishna says, sarge api nopajayante, and he does not take birth when creation happens. Pralayena vyatantita, and when there is destruction, he does not become disturbed. At so many places he is speaking only about his form, his dhamma and his qualities. And aham, no, definitely, Krishna addresses himself more than 50 times as aham in Bhagavad-Gita. So, could not list all that. Okay, so I'm sorry we went beyond time, but the purport was quite big and so many points have to be covered. So, do we have any questions? Can take questions and then can stop.
Sometimes this Mayavadis are using this example, every water from the river goes and ends to the sea.
Yes.
How to cut exactly this example?
Okay, so they...
It looks so satisfying example.
Yes. So the question is that Mayavadis say that the rivers flow just as the rivers flow and merge into the ocean. Similarly, the Atma also flows and merges.
You will go to the same rhythm, like the
Whatever worship, whatever way you take, then it goes to the same place. One thing is that this analogy is actually used to support the point or to explain the point which is given in Shastra. Okay, so that is the way it should be done. We can speak of so many analogies within this material world and try to say whatever I am saying is correct, right? I can do that because there are so many things around me. I can take any of the analogies and say, so therefore this is how it is. But then how is it supported? So this analogy does not have any basis at all in the Shastra. It does not have any basis. So analogy is there to explain one point, but analogy itself does not make the point. Correct? There are so many things happening in this world. I cannot explain the qualities of Krishna by seeing a pig, for example, a very drastic example. Okay, because to understand the qualities of Krishna, I have a different way of understanding. Okay, I cannot take an analogy or I cannot take a reference and superimpose it to understand something which does not have any relation to that at all. Right? So this concept of rivers merging into ocean, I'll tell you how Srila Prabhupada explained this. Okay, so he said that this concept is not proper because although the Shastra does mention that it is the flow of consciousness, consciousness merges in the consciousness of the Supreme, means they are of the same interest. Ekatvam anupashyatah. Remember, in Īśopaniṣad only we discussed this. That is the proper way of understanding. So when the Shastra or when the verse, there is one quote which speaks about this, that rivers merging into, not specifically rivers merging into ocean, but there is a relatable reference like this. So at that time, this is how it should be understood, that the consciousness becomes one with the Supreme, but the identity always remains the same, because this analogy contradicts with that which is explained in the Vedic literatures. Therefore, it can not be used as an analogy to prove a particular point. And Prabhupada also said that it is not the proper explanation of the analogy, it is just that, just like there are different fishes in the river, and then there are fishes in the ocean also, sharks are there in the ocean also, and the fishes go along with the river and merge into the ocean. But that does not mean that fishes lose their individuality. The fishes are still there in the ocean, but they are within the vast ocean and not on the river. So their consciousness, their understanding or their interest becomes one, ekatam anupashyatah, like this. Not that they lose their individuality. Losing the individuality is not the proper way. Okay, so that's the proper understanding. Anything else? Okay, so we will stop. Yes. No, I can use any analogy to prove any point, but then how will that work? That will not work. So the analogy itself is wrong. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be doing text 14, and on Wednesday we'll be doing 15 and 16 together. So the plan is to finish mantra 18 on Friday. Okay, so 15 and 16 are similar. So we'll be doing both 15 and 16 together. So that will be a longer session. Okay, that will be around 2 hours, 10 minutes. Okay, so be prepared for it. Because I got sick last week, so we could not take one session on Friday. So this week we have to finish. So Wednesday session will be a bit longer. Okay, we'll try to finish as fast as possible, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. Śrīla Prabhupada ki, Śrī Īśopaniṣad ki.